One thing about we Nigerians is that we do things because other people are doing it, not minding the consequences. Now, it has not affected that person, doesn't mean that if you do it, it will not affect you. Thermostat. I want to talk about thermostat now. So thermostat is one key component that we Nigerians overlook in our cars. And thermostat serves as a regulating and a sensing device. It serves as a regulating and a sensing device. How does it do this job? Now, it regulates the amount of cold water coming into the engine and the amount of hot water coming out of the engine. It knows when to open and when to close. That is, it senses when the water inside the engine has heated up to a certain degree of about 80 degree to, well, most thermostats have the certain degree that it has to heat up to before the thermostat will open. It is always written on the thermostat. But anything from 80 and above, that is when the thermostat is supposed to open. And when the thermostat opens, cold coolant, that is cold coolant, enters the engine. When the cold coolant enters the engine, the fan will automatically off. Now note that the fan is not supposed to be turning on or to be blowing steady. The fan is not supposed to be blowing steady. The fan is supposed to blow whenever the engine has heated up to about that degree, about 80 degree centigrade to 83 degrees centigrade or above that. So if your fan is blowing constantly, you just turn on your ignition, the fan starts blowing. You know the thermostats have been tampered with, either the thermostat or the coolant temperature sensor. These are the two key components that controls the fan. So how does these two components work? All right, let me explain now. The thermostat, when you start your car initially, your fan will not pick up. The fan will be off. Now, the engine will heat up to a certain degree. When the engine heats up to a certain degree, the thermostat will sense up that heat, and there is a wax and a valve and a piston inside the thermostat that opens and closes depending on the temperature of the coolant inside. So when the coolant heats up to a certain degree, the thermostat will open, allowing the coolant to go, while cool coolant will come into the engine. So when the temperature sensor senses, because the temperature sensor works as a resisting device, when it senses hot fluid, it sends information to the ECU, which is the electronic control unit known as the brain box, to turn on the fan, telling the system that, okay, the coolant inside the engine has heated up to this certain degree. Please blow air in. That blowing of air in is to cool the coolant that has left the engine. The hot coolant leaves the engine to the radiator. So the fan blows cool air through the airstream to cool the coolant inside the radiator before coming back to the engine again. That is how the thermostat works. While the coolant temperature sensor, what it does is to collect information from inside the engine from the coolant, whether the coolant is cold or the coolant is hot, and send information to the ECU. Then the ECU will now make adjustment by turning on and turning off the fan. So whoever is telling you to remove your thermostat, tell the person, say you get first class and first-hand information about what a thermostat is. Don't fall victim to all those quack mechanics that are telling you to remove your thermostat, because even countries that are cold, that the car was imported from, cooler than Nigeria, they are using thermostat. Now Nigeria we come hot, they remove thermostat. Even countries that are hotter are using thermostat. Now Nigeria we dey moderate, no one use thermostat. Peace.